I recently got a comment on one of my posts that they think my sights aren't sighted in correctly. So I thought maybe I can kind of show you guys these pins inside this housing and shoot 3 arrows, one at one from the 20-yard pin, the 45-yard pin, and the 55-yard pin, but all of them I'm standing at 45 yards, the middle pin that's sighted in at 45 yards. Because I think the comment more or less was he doesn't think my sight's sighted in right because there shouldn't be that much that much distance between 20 yards and my 45-yard pin, when in reality I think I could probably shoot all the way out to 35 with that same pin. So what I'm going to try to replicate is the first arrow I'm going to shoot, I'm going to use my 45-yard pin. Then I'm going to not move the scope housing whatsoever. I'm going to shoot the 20-yard pin and shoot at the same 45-yard target. That's my farthest target down there, the 2 white ones right next to each other. Then I'm going to shoot my 55-yard target, and you're going to see that that arrow should be high. The 20-yard pin should be, the 20-yard arrow should be low, and the 45-yard arrow, the first one I shoot, should be at 45 yards right there, dead. So this one I'm going to use my middle pin, 45 yards, and we're going to aim as close as we can to the middle of this target. Okay, we can see where we ended up. Yep, right there at the heart, just left of the heart on that target. Now I'm going to use the 20-yard pin and shoot at the same target, the same exact yardage at 45 yards, and we're going to find out how much lower it is compared to using my 45-yard pin. Okay, we're on. Looks like we're only 2-3 shorter. As soon as I get done with this 55-yard pin, we'll walk down there and I'll show you. All right, so I'm gonna grab you guys and we're gonna go take a walk down there, see how it looks. Okay, that looks like a pretty good representation of what I was aiming to do. The middle arrow is the 45-yard pin. The bottom one is my 20. The top one is my 55-yard marker on my sights. So as you can see, there's not as much variant in between 20 and 45 with my sights and my setup with my arrows as there is between 45 and 55. The 55 may have been a little bit off, but I mean, they're all straight up and down. So, I mean, it's pretty clear cut and dry that my 45 is right, my 20-yard is right, and my 55 is right based off all of these arrows, the placement. So, if there's any other testing you guys want me to do to show you guys that, you know, there's, in my opinion, one thing I'm gonna set up at, and I'm gonna shoot my 20-yard pin and my 45 pin. Yep. Okay. So what I'm gonna do is show you that my 20-yard pin can pretty much cover all the way to 35, meaning I could probably do without even having a 20-yard pin and just do 35, 45, and 55. Here's the 20-yard pin at the 35-yard target. Aiming at the same target again. Okay. Now I'm going to use the 45-yard pin. Aiming at the same target. Looks like my 20-yard pin's right there at the heart. We're going to use a 45-yard pin now. No pin gapping or nothing like that, just straight up 45-yard pin. Yep, that one sounded like it may on through. But let me grab you real quick and we'll go on there. Yep, as you can see, well, maybe not. Here, there we go, zoomed out a little bit. As you can see, my 20-yard first arrow here on the right side, where the fletchings didn't go through, I'm using my 20-yard pin right there. And I would say that that's a pretty good shot with a 20-yard pin at 35 yards. Just about an inch low, maybe. And then this is my 45-yard pin at 35 yards. So there's a pretty big gap between those two when you're standing that close. Anyways, all I'm trying to explain is that I do feel that my sights are set up correctly for my setup. So basically what I'm trying to get at is when you drop down to only having a 450 grain arrow, but you're shooting it 315 feet a second, and then on top of that having a 32-inch draw and all of these combinations, 80-pound limbs and all that stuff, 80-pound mods, when you've got a flatter trajectory with an object, it's just like when you shoot a rifle. The flatter it stays for longer distance, the closer you're going to be in range of or around that original target. Meaning, so if that top pin sighted in at 20, right? Well, since my arrow setup is so light and I'm shooting so heavy a weight and have such a long draw length to add all those things in to get my 315 feet a second, basically at 20 yards and 35 yards, my arrow is still shooting at the same trajectory, meaning that there's not much difference in between. Since these pins are fixed in here, the only way you can sight this in is by moving these to calibrate the other two pins after you've got the top pin sighted in. So you sight in the top pin at 20, sight it in at 60, and then after you do that, then you got to find out where these next two pins come into play at. Very simple. At least that's the way I did it, because I find that to be the simplest way to do it. But I don't think that I sighted this in wrong. I really do believe I sighted it in right. Also, with that being said, it being simple on these sights, you know, I realize everybody's setup is not going to be like mine, and that's totally fine. You know, not everybody's the same size, not everybody's built the same, so I totally understand how someone could misinterpret the sight not being sighted in correctly. But my thing is with, if you, like, let's say you shoot, you know, a 500 grain arrow or a 600 grain arrow because you want to go after some big game and you think weight's what you need to have, that's fine. That means your arrow at 20 yards and 30 yards is now going to be way different because you just changed the weight of everything. So, and your kinetic energy is going to go down too. But anyways, what that does is it takes your 20, you're still good at 20, but maybe you can't go to 35 anymore. Maybe you can only go about 30, maybe 25, somewhere in there, maybe 27 and a half. Because what's going to happen, the heavier your arrow gets, the farther apart those pins start becoming at that point. Meaning, the further distance you get back, the further those arrows are going to get apart from each other when you use the different pins, like I just did at 45 yards. So basically, your arrow is going to drop sooner rather than later, and not stay the same trajectory at 20 and at 35 for the same distance to get the same exact result. So like I said, if you guys got any questions, please let me know. I'll be more than happy to answer them. And as always, like and subscribe. I appreciate it. Thank you.